Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Ferrisburg Planning Commission to order on Thursday, February 5th, 2026. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Post,
Here?
Commissioner Tuggle,
Here.
Commissioner Carlson,
Here.
Commissioner Weber,
Here.
Commissioner Hawley, Commissioner Schoberg,
Present.
Commissioner DeYoung.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, I move to excuse Commissioner Hawley. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And may I have a motion for approval of our December 4th Planning Commission meetings as printed?
Chairman, I move to.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. This is an opportunity for the public to comment. If there are members of the public who would like to address the Planning Commission, this is the time to come forward and introduce yourself. If you were here for the hearing on the zoning changes for dwelling units in general commercial, we will consider speakers at that time. And we will also consider speakers on the cell phone tower issue. Is anyone here who would like to address at this time? Good evening.
Good evening.
Nicole Larrabell, 16814 Virginia Avenue, Ferrisburg. I have a couple comments tonight on tonight's work session. Currently, there's a 3-acre minimum on PUDs in Ferrisburg. The most recent PUD development approved in Ferrisburg was under 3 acres. It was passed anyways despite large public outcry due to the development being under the minimum acreage, violating the zoning ordinance. What's next, the community said, the house next door? The city planner tonight is suggesting no minimum acreage for PUDs. I strongly oppose the suggestion. Please keep the 3-acre minimum and enforce it every time. Secondly, lot sizes in my own inland overlay district. Minimum lot width is being proposed to be slashed in half to 50 feet, along with lot square footage reduced by half to 5,000 square feet. Lot coverage proposed up at 60%, up from 35%. Where is the rainwater going to go? This area is already plagued by flooding. More lot coverage means less ground to absorb the rainwater and more untreated runoff flowing into our local waterways, further deteriorating the quality of Spring Lake, burdening our lakefront property owners with higher waterfront quality improvement assessments. One of the homes in my neighborhood has 200 feet of frontage. Under the proposed changes, 4 homes with 4 ADUs could be built there for a total of 8 units on one existing 200 by 120 lot. I'm not saying this is good or bad, but rather that most of the public does not know these changes are even being discussed. And these are huge changes to the zoning ordinance. The packet for today's meeting is 311 pages long and difficult to understand. The 35 total meeting views online for the last Planning Commission meeting shows just over 1% of residents have viewed the meeting. In an effort to improve transparency from the Planning Commission and City Council, I propose mailing notices of public hearings to everyone in every zoning district that is being proposed zoning changes. This should already be the standard, yet meetings come and go without notices of hearings mailed out to residents. One example being today's public hearing on ADUs being allowed for the first time in different zoning districts. Notices should be mailed out to each property owner that there is a public hearing for reduced lot sizes, increased lot coverage, rezoning, PUD requirement changes, increased number of units allowed in R3, changes to what's allowed by right or by special land use in their zoning district, whichever is relevant to their personal properties. A public engagement event is needed to engage the public on these proposed changes, like what was done with the successful master plan open house. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else to address the commission at this time? If not, we'll close public comment and go to the first public hearing. This is a public hearing to amend city code by amending chapter 154 zoning to amend provisions relating to accessory dwelling units in the general commercial GC and light industrial LI1 zoning districts. Is anyone here to address the commission on this topic? Okay, open the public hearing at 7:07 and close at 7:08. And next we move to item 7, a discussion on this topic. Discussion and take action if appropriate to recommend to City Council to adopt or not adopt an amendment to amend provisions relating to accessory dwelling units in the general commercial, GC, and light industrial LI1 zoning districts. Craig or David, do you want to make any opening comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a minor amendment to an existing provision. So currently, we allow for accessory dwelling units in the general commercial and light industrial 1 zoning district, so they're already permitted. This ordinance goes on to define ADU. We never had a definition, so we're adding a definition. We're revising the definition of dwelling unit as well, and that's concerning the sleeping area in a unit. We've had some differences of opinion on interpretation of areas within ADUs, whether or not they were intended for sleep. So the sleeping area provision is clearly defined in that ordinance for the definition of dwelling unit. The internal connection requirement between an ADU and the principal area of that commercial or industrial use is now we don't require that internal connection, so it could be an external only access to the ADU. Also, this really one of the main issues was there's a 1-floor limitation for ADUs. So as you remember from a lot of the channel side conversations, they have a second floor and a first floor, and between the two of them, it kind of functioned as the ADU. So just to clean this up and make it simple and ensure that there's a consistent interpretation, we'd just like to strike that 1-floor limitation so that the living space can be 2 floors on the main level and that mezzanine level. And then lastly, the ADUs are currently special land uses in general commercial and LI1. We're proposing that they be transferred to permitted land uses. So that means they wouldn't have to come to the Planning Commission and then City Council along with a public hearing for approval. So in these cases, we're always reviewing the main principal building as part of site plan review. If it's a new building, it may go through a special land use process as well. But just to convert a small area to a limited size ADU, we feel that that should be just administrative approvals as a permitted use.
That's great. Commissioners? So I think, David, this is great. I think we've been over this, but Mr. Mayor?
No, I was just gonna say that I'm happy to see this move forward, and I'm sure City Council is gonna be supportive of it because it fits so well with what we heard from the citizens in the master plan. So I'm
Wonderful.
excited about it.
Great,
I'm in agreement.
good. If there's no further, Craig, this is a vote?
Yes, sir. It's recommendation of City Council to adopt or not adopt.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt?
I so move. Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is a public hearing to amend the city code by amending Chapter 154 zoning to amend provisions relating to wireless communication facilities, amateur radio service, satellite dishes, and other antennas. And I understand we have a speaker here specifically to address the commission. Logan? Would you like to? Yes, please. Please introduce yourself.
Of course. Good evening, Board. My name is Logan Phillips. I am with Telecad Engineering, who is a direct contractor for Verizon Wireless, who we are here on behalf for tonight. Myself, I was here back in October for the first of these meetings. My coworker, Amy Rodriguez, was here for the past two. Again, we are here tonight to help clarify, explain, answer any questions on the revisions to the wireless ordinance that we are discussing tonight. I'd like to open up. I do know that there was discussion and talks about the need for the cell tower in the community. I have brought with me some documents to help bring some light, and these are directly from the Verizon engineers that work for the western side of the Michigan state. So these documents were provided to the board for you guys to review. With a disclaimer, I will state one of the documents I will share with you tonight is proprietary. Verizon Legal has allowed me to print out some copies for the board to review, but I am required to take those copies back with me. I cannot leave them here with you. Mr. Chair, is it okay if I pass out some documents?
Yes, please.
Another map.
So the map that most of you are currently looking at, the 11 by 17 page, the larger page with the picture, this is direct data from Verizon's engineers that is collected based on usage and cell phone usage in this area. So this is from January of 2026. This is direct data from internal Verizon database. This is proprietary information. Verizon was willing to share this with you all, so there was direct understanding of the issues with the area for coverage. The green area is area that Verizon receives data back saying that text messages, phone calls, social media, data usage will work to a good standard. The red is data that is direct data back showing that calls can be dropped. They may work, they may not work. Text messages may not go out. Calls to E911 may not go out. Social media, data, streaming, those things are not guaranteed to work, any of those things in the red area. So these zones are the hot zones, and this is what Verizon is seeing over the past couple of years. They also wanted me to let you know, this is January. I was informed by their engineers, this is not as bad as it gets. The summertime, since this is a lake destination, a travel destination, the map is much worse in the summertime. But they wanted to provide the most recent data they had to show the board. The other page that you see, the smaller standard sheet of paper, is an engineer letter from Jin Tang, who is the engineer for this area, stating the need signed by him for coverage in the area. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have on these two documents.
I'll start with one question to get the ball rolling. We have before us changes to our zoning ordinance to allow a tower to be constructed up to 300 feet. And we have a sort of a specific area where it could go. The light industrial area near the Buckeye terminals and the Verplank facilities. I think some of us would like to know what goes into the thinking, and how do we know that putting a tower in those areas, something like that, will largely or substantially remedy what we're seeing in the handout you've given us.
So asking about seeing the actual coverage that will be changed, is that the question of what the actual results would look like?
As best you can address that.
Yeah, so at the time we're at, we are here tonight to work with the board to amend the zoning ordinance to allow towers taller than 75 feet, and as you alluded to, 250 to 300, for that to be approved and in the ordinance. Once that is approved in the ordinance, that gives Verizon the ability to build a tower of that capacity in the zonable districts that are approved per the revisions. We will have to come back to the board once we have an official candidate, we have surveys done, we have environmental studies done, we build zoning drawings, we will bring all of that information with us. Verizon engineers have to have exact coordinates and exact information on a specific location, but we will bring those documents that will show the improvement of coverage, all of the areas that have bad service that will be improved. All of those documents will be provided in the official zoning hearing, that if amended tonight, we will be back with actual property, actual location, and all those supporting documents that show the improvement that we're trying to complete.
Thank you.
Well, why can't you give us that information, just proposed what would happen? I mean, you could still tell us, even though you don't know if it's approved or not, if you get this approval, where are you looking at putting these places?
Where exactly? So
From what we were told at the last meeting, that you couldn't give us any idea of where they were going to be until you knew if it was approved or not. But I have information from August 28th, 2025, that there's several different places where they thought they should be placed. Somewhere down North Shore is highly preferable, Fireburn Park, or on the abandoned tennis courts, by Verplank Supply Dock, or by fuel transmission stations. So those are ideas that you're looking at?
they are. So the handout that I just passed out is a basic parcel screenshot with a yellow box drawn in. Per the zoning revisions, if they're approved tonight, allow towers 250 up to 300 with approval in L1 and P1 districts. So by the zoning regulations that your board has put in place, those are the guidelines we try to follow to find a property. So this is the area that Verizon's engineers need the tower to be. In regards to a specific exact location, we will have all that information once we know our guidelines and our rules we can play by per the zoning ordinance that's written and approved tonight. But we do not have one property picked out. That is what we have to come back after all these provisions are done, and that is where we'll look deep dive into where the improvement is. We still have to come back to you guys for that final approval. We are just here early on to work with the board to get a zoning ordinance that will allow for the need to be fixed.
I just feel that really strongly that everybody wants cell phone coverage, but nobody wants it in their backyard. Nobody wants that cell tower in their backyard. There are concerns about radiation, which have not been proven, but they're out there and people believe them. There are concerns about aesthetics. There are concerns about the stability of the cell tower itself. And I read that a cell tower can decrease house value by 20%. So those are things that people that want the cell phone coverage are going to go, yay, yeah, that's great, but I don't want it in my backyard. And then you're going to have everyone else saying the same thing. You know, that's I think what makes me hesitant about some of this. I'm not trying to be negative. I know people deserve to have cell phone coverage. I had one provider at one point where I had to go down to the fire station to get coverage. So, you know, I understand what you need to do, but I just am also cognizant of the fact that people are not going to be happy about having that, like in the park, at Fireburn Park where kids are. if they even have in their mind that that is gonna cause fatigue or cancer or whatever, then
Mhm.
there's, all hell is gonna break loose, so.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, absolutely. And what I tell most zoning boards, and these are questions that we get asked just about every time we come to a zoning hearing. It's this industry, a lot of zoning ordinances will claim or will not claim this. Cell towers at this point is infrastructure to the country. It is, everyone doesn't leave this thing right here 10 feet from them. It's with them when they sleep. It's when they're at work all the time. It is with you all the time. So they look at it as Verizon had a massive outage. I don't believe it was up here. It was down south where it was down for 9 or 10 hours. And there were, people were getting lost, didn't have GPS, couldn't make phone calls. It was a disaster, and that was for 8 or 9 hours. So we know these cell towers are not the most aesthetic looking things, but they are infrastructure, and that is another reason we've looked at this area. This is a import-export area with large silos, petroleum tanks. We try to work to find spots that will be as best as possible for the community and not putting it in smack dab in the middle of a neighborhood. At times, we try to find the best places, and sometimes that has houses nearby, sometimes it doesn't. All of the wavelengths and antennas that are used are all federally approved and federally regulated. But again, I know the aesthetics aspect of it, but at the end of the day, Verizon is not coming here to build a tower to make money. They are building the tower. I believe I said this at the first meeting in October. This is the #2 most dropped call lack of service for Verizon across 3 different states: Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky. Verizon can get in trouble with the federal government if in the summertime something were to happen, E911 does not go through. Verizon is not doing this as a moneymaker. Verizon really wants to fix this problem for the community, for the safety. Again, I know cell towers are not aesthetic, but they are viewed as infrastructure and for the safety of communities.
And a lot of this is due to our topography, right? I mean, the lake, the hills, the dunes and all of that.
It is a big factor with this site specifically. The dunes are a big factor, so that is why we came in early on with the taller tower. So topography is always a factor. It's a massive factor, and just I don't believe there is even a single cell tower in the city of Ferrisburg. There are neighboring jurisdictions, but I don't believe there's one here. And again, go back to the other thing. A lot of people don't look at cell towers. You just don't really notice them. But when you're driving, you will see them everywhere. You'll see them in neighborhoods that developments have built around them. They're on school properties. They're on football light posts. They're everywhere. Sometimes you don't see them. Sometimes you do. But that is what it takes in this day and age with the demand of technology to have adequate infrastructure for the country.
Could I just ask Craig, if we were going to place a cell tower, like near the fuel depot, we can't demand they allow it, right? I mean, it's their property.
That's correct.
And the same with any other property, for planks, we can't demand that they put it there, but would they, where else, what places do we have that they could be placed?
Only property that they own is the only place they can put it without permission from the property owner.
Piggybacking off that, so I keep hearing Fire Barn Park. Is that allowed to put it in a park? I thought that was a restricted area.
I'm not sure it would be because the grant for that improvements there indicates that it should all be parkland.
Okay,
Just like at Coast Guard Park, it's deed restricted.
yeah.
Yeah, at one
Hearing-
point we said Coast Guard was federally granted to us, and it has a lot of restrictions on its use, so we couldn't
Yeah.
put one there. But
Okay.
I don't think there's a problem with other parks, right?
Firebarn Park, you couldn't put one there, no?
Yeah, that makes me happy to hear. I just had a couple other things. So you've provided us with a lot of maps, or you and your counterpart. I feel like this is the first map personally that I've seen that actually supports the need from a map standpoint. So thank you for this. I know the residents are saying it, but the maps that we've been provided do not show accurately the loss of coverage. So thank you for that. And then just to clarify, so if we make amendments tonight, then if they come back with a location, does that come to us to make another approval? If we don't approve of the location, then we can stop this, or does it go to city council, or once we make these amendments, then it just is what it is? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, considered a special land use, so you would
Okay.
have a public hearing and then you would make a recommendation to the city council.
Okay.
On the use.
So again, the public hearing and the discussion to follow are to amend the zoning ordinances to allow a taller tower. And then the expectation is that you would try to negotiate, try to find someone willing to spot the tower and then do the homework. And then you would come back and present the proposal first to planning, and then it would go to city council after that? Or do we have would we have authority?
Or the city council.
Thank you.
I just ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for this map.
Mhm.
And like Jordan was saying, it's very different than the other maps that we've seen.
Mhm.
So I guess part of the confusion that I've been under is we have seen different maps and they've said different things. And, you know, looking at this right now, I'm seeing 3 big target areas that are circled with coverage gaps, but I'm seeing the target zone of a tower in a green zone.
Mhm.
So can you just help me understand that?
Absolutely. So the area that we're looking at, this industrial area, is green at the current time. Some of the towers down in Grand Haven are pushing the service. That's pretty much kind of the edge, but it's reaching that area. These towers have an umbrella effect. So the 3 boxes that you see on the map, those are the hot zones that RF has identified as the 3 worst areas. But that location will allow for the beach area to be hit, as well as the residential area on the map. And the farthest north section will also be completed with this project as well. So based on if you try to go to the north side of this map, you're not going to hit the beach the right way. Again, topography is a big factor in this. So this area was specifically chosen by them based on this data. But you are correct. The area is green, but this location with the umbrella effect, it'll allow other towers to talk to each other. So it's going to be a bigger spread than just a small area on the road.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And then do you have just any insight on, just to help us understand why there's such a huge discrepancy in the maps between the map that I'm looking at on the Verizon website itself is giving a little different picture than what I'm seeing here. So it's just from our standpoint, I think it's hard to say, okay, what is the real information?
Yeah, so the map that Verizon's website is where the map you're referring to.
That and the other maps that we've been provided.
So some of the other maps we provided are basic maps that are, they call them heat maps. They show proposed improved coverage, or they're not as detailed as this map. They are maps that Verizon's willing to share in public because this is proprietary information. Really and truly, it's just we provided a bunch of different maps to try to explain the reasoning. Really, this should have been the map we started with. We agree. We did cause some confusion with different colors and different kind of maps. But that was the reason. After speaking with Verizon Legal, they said we will give them proprietary so we can make this really show the issue. So the maps themselves, we did provide a lot of different maps, but they're all speaking the same thing. This is just the most simplest version of that map based on color coding and real live data. The Verizon website, that is, as bluntly put it, that is a national marketing website. What they're taking is, okay, Verizon, we claim we have service down North Shore Road. You have a bar, maybe, you can maybe send a text. That's Verizon's marketing team saying we have service there, but it really is a marketing thing. But this data is from the Grand Rapids Verizon office with engineers that focus on this side of the state. So this data is showing real live what is happening in Ferrysburg based on a national marketing map.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So if we make a allowance in L1 and PI zoning districts, we're gonna be able to cover these three with a 300-foot tower?
That is
The
what,
three boxes?
that's what Verizon engineers are claiming, yes, and stating.
Because this will definitely bring in the opportunity for citizens to also just have Wi-Fi service in their home.
Part of these Verizon cell towers, the bigger plan is they will, when Verizon has adequate service, that allows for other products to be used. The main objective here with Ferrisburg is not selling Wi-Fi packages to homes. This is a strictly cell service, emergency-related situation.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Logan from the commission?
Well, if we can get good coverage and not put it in a residential area, I think it's a win.
I think so too. I would like to acknowledge and ask three members of the community who are also here tonight. Did you want to speak, or just would you like to speak, or just show that you're here in support of this? And are you here in support of this proposal? Tom, Bill, Kevin? You can't sit in the second row and not be recognized.
I'm Tom Godfrey. I live at 19183 North Shore Drive. We've owned that property since 2003. We've lived there full time for the last 15 years. I would say cell coverage there is dangerous. I mean, we really can't rely on it. And the thing of it is, he's showing you a January map, and that's probably the time of year we have better cell coverage, because with the thin coverage, what happens during the summertime, the system gets overloaded, and we literally can't use our cell phone in our house during the summertime. We have to walk out to the front of the house. So, from my perspective, it's really a safety issue. I mean, particularly, over the years, the traffic on North Shore has expanded. There's been more and more people using the beach, emergencies and things like that. So I really feel that this is a serious infrastructure issue that we need to address as a community. And it sounds like there's some reasonable opportunities to put the tower in places that, aren't in somebody's backyard. So I would, as a citizen, I would really support this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Bill Buck again, North Shore Drive. Coverage is minimal, and I live on basically the top of the hill, on probably the highest point along North Shore Estates. It's better now because all the leaves are off the tree. When the leaves come on, it gets worse. And like Tom said, in the summertime, there is more traffic. Not necessarily gets overloaded, but it's taxed. And with a lot of people on the beach, they can't use their phone on the beach anyway. They want to call 911 on the beach, not going to work. So I'm in support of the tower as a citizen, and not for Verizon. I no longer work for Verizon. I'm retired. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kevin Keeley. I live on Piney Point Drive. Apologies for being late, but I just wanted to say that I too support a 250 to 300 foot tower in the area where it fits. We don't get any cell phone coverage really at all, maybe one bar at best at night. But from a safety standpoint, I know it was probably mentioned earlier, just being able to make a call, but with the prevalence of everybody using their cell phones as their primary phone, not having a landline anymore, clearly they're used for 911 calls and for that, they need a tower to be able to triangulate those, if I'm not mistaken. So I think from a safety standpoint, it's warranted, certainly warranted but having the right size tower, which of course nobody wants next to their property. Finding the right spot for it, and maybe a commercial location would be appropriate. So just wanted to say that I am in favor of a taller, more effective tower and better cell phone coverage. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, are we ready to put this to a vote, or would we like to have some more discussion? Thank you, thank you. If no one else is here to present, we'll close the public hearing at 7:37. And we'll now move to our discussion on this issue. Thank you, thank you.
Well, I will say, admit when I came in here, I had a lot of concerns, and your candor, and I trust what you've told me, and I had a lot of concerns after doing research, and I'm much relieved by what you told us, so I would tend to support this.
I will echo exactly what Regina said. I was very skeptical of this coming in, and I have been in previous meetings, but today I just feel different. And the citizen testimonies are the most important and the most powerful. You guys swayed me.
Like, because it relates to public safety and infrastructure is important. I think the people that spoke in public, it's not inconvenience, it's a need, but it's also going to be a need when people come here when they're like, it's in my backyard. It's like, well, we heard from the public, we want it. We're also going to hear maybe that we don't want it. I think just being prepared for that, but also considering that I think it is different. It's not something that's much for convenience. It's more infrastructure and public safety. Got to be in support of it.
In the interest of time, I support everything that's been said.
Mr. Chair, I am in support of that as well. I do have a few comments to maybe address a couple other things I think we could improve on in some other tables of the ordinance. That's all right. Like I said, I'm in support of allowing these larger towers in the industrial zones. I do think that the carriers and the representatives have indicated that the 75-foot towers are not an option. They're not a solution for the challenges to clear the dunes. And they're currently in Ferrisburg, we have no towers within that category of the 75 feet. I think we are also under the assumption here that we want to keep the large infrastructure out of the residential neighborhoods and the parks while allowing larger towers in the more appropriate zoning districts, such as the industrial zones. And, you know, cell towers, these leases can last for decades and decades, so I think it's really important that we get this right, you know, while we have the opportunity to make some changes. And I think our goal here is to get the effective coverage in the right locations and larger towers and not have these ineffective towers in the wrong locations. So a 75-foot tower, you know, it's 6 to 7 stories tall. And as written right now, our ordinance would allow this in a residential district. So this would be a tower not necessarily would give us any benefit, but this would be a 6 to 7 story structure. And that, I think, raises land use compatibility concerns. And the section requires the tower to be an accessory to a non-residential use. I mean, it's kind of, it doesn't necessarily change the scale of the impact, but it does place effects on the neighborhoods. So I feel like this section of this ordinance allows a structure that's too big for the neighborhoods and too small to solve the problem we're trying to solve. So it permits something in residential districts that the carriers themselves have identified as not a workable solution. So this provision internally is inconsistent with the rest of the ordinance. So I'm going to propose that we strike that section of the ordinance. I don't think we need 75-foot towers in residential zones. And then this is going to allow us to have the 250 to 300-foot towers in the appropriate areas that they've indicated would be more effective.
Sandy, what section are you talking about?
So I'm looking at section, it's the first section under the zoning table, the location number and dimensional requirements for wireless communication facilities.
Got it.
And this is telling us that RD, RG1, RG2, and RG3 can have 75-foot towers. And I'm proposing that we strike that section.
So would we be saying that they are not allowed in residential, or would we put an asterisk and say like case by case, or just?
If the carriers themselves have come to us and said that they're not going to be effective to, get over the dunes, I have yet to think that this is even necessary. And if we've gone through all this housing discussion, and we've been even hesitant to talk 3-4 story structures. We're talking about like a 6 to 7 story structure in a residential zone that, from what I'm understanding, isn't even going to be an effective solution. So I just want to throw that out there to consider.
Just a minute, Sandy. Craig and David, are there existing towers in residential areas in Ferrisburg that are up to 75 feet currently?
There are no towers in the city.
Even 50-foot towers? And
Ham radio, amateur radio.
I think that's a completely different section of the ordinance. The ham radio and the satellite dishes and everything is already covered.
I think it would be no problem to strike that first row from the table, because we did simplify this table as now focus only on wireless communications, and our section C above that is for amateur radio, satellite dishes, and other antennas. And we're providing those provisions to ensure that you can use those within reason, based on FCC and Michigan Zoning Enabling Act provisions. So in the past, we kind of grouped both of these kind of personal use antennas and over-the-air reception devices, all that, with cell towers. Since we've just divided them up now, I think we can actually strike that from the table, because I think that old 75-foot provision was, I think, meant for ham radio and other things like that. So since that's covered, I think it would be no issue to strike that first row, possibly even the second row as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was wondering that second row as well.
And then we're just focused on the LI1 and PI, which are proposed for these new taller structures, and then LI2, which already allowed the towers up to 300 feet.
Yeah.
Logan, could you adjust the mic for a minute? So the commission is considering a revision to the draft amendment. It appears this would not affect your proposal. You're considering a 250 to 300-foot tower to address a large area of lack of service. We're considering striking a provision that would allow 75-foot towers in residential areas. I think there's sentiment to proceed with that and say we don't need that. Is that a concern to you?
For this project, no. I mean, we would, if we're asking for a 250, 300-foot tower, then per the zoning ordinance, it is over the height limit for residential. The only way to really go about that would be to go to a variance board of appeals to address that. But our project right now, we're pursuing the industrial properties at this time. So
I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. This could be a First Amendment. Sandy, are you proposing other amendments too, or just?
There's one other that I would like to throw out to the commission to see if, in the last section of the chart in the LIPI district, we had briefly discussed a separation from a residential lot line, or from residential, and I think it landed with 500 feet from residential dwelling. And I would prefer that to read lot line, because measuring the separation from the lot line versus a structure provides a clear, predictable, and enforceable standard. And, that doesn't give any separation for maybe a vacant lot that hasn't been built on yet, because it would be more based on the structure versus the lot line. So I would like to see that read lot line versus structure.
And that's right here
Yeah,
in this
on the
box.
last one.
So on the same page, it's this little box here that speaks of a 500-foot setback from existing residential dwellings. And if I understand the proposal, it would change the wording to the
Residential lot line versus
residential
structure.
lot line. David, do you have any concern on that?
I understand the intent, but that does cut into the allowable area a good bit. I mean, that could reduce the potential area by 200-300 feet or possibly. We'd have to do a mapping analysis to do a buffer around existing dwellings versus the lot where the dwelling exists. So let's just say the house is, just looking at a couple examples here. Kind of the houses to the north of the terminal effective area. Okay, that's a good example there. So if you took a 500-foot measurement from the dwelling itself, it would be much closer to the south property line. But then if you apply that 500-foot setback from the south property line, that cuts into the allowable area quite a bit. So, I mean, it could reduce that potential area by just looking at the backyards of those properties. That could be 100 feet, could be more in other cases. Like the one with the rice green yard to the right. That one looks like it's measure it, but that could be 200. So essentially, you'd be right now. It's taking the measurement from the back of that house. So that's 300 feet. So that in that case, that would cut an additional that much. We're essentially pushing that whole line, that double area south, and you'd be taking 500 feet from the south property line rather from the unit itself.
If we have, the entire industrial zoning district to work with, that's, I guess, was my hope that we would have more buffer between homes, between residential.
I did have two thoughts on that. I mean, I was thinking about that as well. I was at first going to ask whether the 500 feet from the dwellings still be workable for the applicant, for the provider. So, I mean, I think there's still plenty of areas to potential lands that would be qualified, but that would be a bit more extreme in terms of 200-300 more feet into that area. So, I mean, I just don't know what type of impact that would have without doing a map analysis or having them assess it.
If you zoom out a little bit, though, I mean, we have that huge open area of space. And I guess my hope was it wasn't so close to all the existing homes. We have, if you zoom out even more, there's that whole industrial zoning district that we're talking about for a potential tower.
Yes, please.
So based on this map, a little bit about what we do. Again, assuming this is approved and we move forward with actually hitting the start line of the project, a little bit about what we do is we have to go to these candidates and work out a deal in a spot. As the city manager alluded to, it'd make our job a lot easier, but we cannot go to these properties and say we're building a cell tower on it right here, and just go do it. We have to work with these landowners. We have to get their approval, and especially just in my experience working in this industry, these are large Verplank, export-import. You have petroleum. These companies use their space accordingly, and they are typically very strict about where they'll even allow a tower if they're even going to let us put a tower on their property. So our goal obviously is to follow the zoning ordinance as close as we can. That is our goal. All those projects, that never always happens based on, for example, in this project, say there's one property that is the only property that's interested, and there's one spot that works. If that's what we have, that's what we'll bring to the board. And at that point, it's really the cell tower is going to happen or it's not based on that, if that's the location we bring. So big picture wise, that is a lot of land. It's easy to see. But in my eyes, doing this, it's very niche. There's only very specific spots, and those spots don't always, meet every single item, even though we try to do that, but that's just how it works because we cannot force these people to put it or even do it to that degree. There's a lot of negotiating in the very beginning of this to find something that works.
When you talk to them the first time, so you go out and meet with them, do they often go like, oh, that's where I want it? Like, do they kind of have in their mind where they think it's going to go already?
99% of the time, I have to tell them that is not zoning compliant because they typically want to push it into the very top corner of their parcel, right on the property lines, and say, this is where we want it. And our job is to work with them, try to find an agreeable spot that works with zoning and works with the landowner, but sometimes it works, sometimes they demand they want it where they want it if they're going to have it on their property.
And I know I've asked this in previous meetings, and I think the answer was no, but is there a particular product or property that is that you're hoping to work with?
Again, the industrial area is our goal. The closer to the beach we can get is more optimal for the beach's emergency responses. That's really the biggest, heaviest hitter of this project, even though it's going to help other areas. But at this time, there is not anyone that is on board or we've really worked through. Again, we wanted to make sure we had the playbook from these revisions to make sure we were finding properties that would be viable or we could present to the board.
So negotiations have somewhat started.
Not much in depth. We've identified and been working to try to find different contacts for different properties, but nothing has really taken any kind of massive movement. It's working to identify who's the right person to talk to and just starting those conversations, but we were not going to have any in-depth conversations until we knew that the zoning ordinance was going to be revised to allow it.
So if, looking at this map, this yellow area, if you go to all of these property owners and they say no, will you try to find another spot?
That's what they pay us to do, is to try to find something. But this project is such a high priority that the efforts on this are going to be much more than a normal project. Typically, in a normal farmland, middle of Michigan, if there's no much interest, they may cancel the site. But in this project, they are going to do everything they can to try to find a property. But at the end of the day, if the only property that I find that's interested and it doesn't do what RF needs it to do, Verizon's engineers to do, then again, we're defeating the purpose. That's why we're here to work with you guys, find something that works this time, the big tower that fixes the problem this time.
Thank you. I saw David and Craig manipulating the map. Do you have anything to add?
We were just taking measurements from the residential lot line. So you see that blue line extending down, and then there's a black call-out box. It says 524, so just a little bit above that would be 500 feet from a residential lot line. So that dips into that industrial area 200 or 300 feet more than as written in the code now. So my only concern was that they've read the code as proposed. They're okay with it. Is this reduction of that available area a concern to you? So if it is a major concern, we should do more map analysis, or they should go back, or we would have to come back and amend the ordinance if we found it to be a problem.
Or we could decline the second suggestion that's been made, but maybe go, I think we're on board with the First Amendment. I don't think there's a 75 feet in residential areas for cell towers. I think we're on board with that. I'm concerned that we're proposing 250 foot to 300 foot towers with a 500 foot setback from a residence, and then we're considering whether or not we could also make it from the property line of the residents. And a number of these properties are long, narrow lots that extend back into the commercial zone. Personally, I kind of think it's a well-meaning, but maybe it's a little overkill because it's already, they're saying these towers don't fall down, but if I had one of those homes, within 1,000 feet, I would like it to be as far from my home as possible. And we are requiring that already with 500 feet from a dwelling place. So I've chimed in. Do other commissioners have a comment on this?
I think a football field and 2/3 is plenty enough setback from the home.
And that's 500?
500 feet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see the intent, Sandy, for sure. It does give me a little peace of mind to know that when they come, if they come back with a proposed location, that there's still another set of eyes that get to look at that. So I feel like we could maybe catch it then if we felt it was too close to a residential.
Thank you. Sandy, I'm reading it that we have support for the First Amendment and maybe not support, but would you like to put it to a vote, or are you comfortable that we just proceed with the first?
I just feel like we, like Regina mentioned in the beginning, this having a big cell tower next to somebody's home is going to affect their property value. I think we need to be mindful of that. And people who are already existing residents there, they are going to be the ones that are going to be impacted. So I just want to make sure that we're giving them enough consideration. And I'm just seeing all this big open space there. And I would like personally to see that tower as far as possible, because if it's a 300-foot tower with a 300-foot setback, that's, it's a monstrosity. And I know a lot of people want the coverage, but a lot of these people aren't probably going to want it right next to their home, but it looks like it might be coming. So that's just my thought on it. I will definitely be happy to make the motion on the first one, and if there's no consensus or support for the second, then we'll just leave it as written. Would you like me to make a motion?
Yes, I'd
Okay.
entertain a motion.
All right. Okay. I am going to move the Planning Commission recommend to City Council to approve the wireless ordinance amendments with including striking the 75-foot residential tower provision. And then we're also striking, I think, what was the other one? I didn't have that one written down. The second one down. Both of the 75-foot tower provisions in the chart.
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. Craig, is that sufficiently clear to you? The two first columns would be struck?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion? I think we're ready to go. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I think we approved the whole package with the one change that there was support on. So we're sending this to City Council. Craig, when will this be brought before council?
First reading will be February 16th.
February 16th? Okay. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
Don't forget your maps.
If you don't mind if I grab those.
Is it just
Oh, shoot.
the red and green?
We don't
you
get to
need,
keep
or do
the
you need
maps?
this one too?
The one
This is
Hang
that
on.
one.
I
This
wrote
is
it.
that one. I don't know if you passed out.
I think the second one. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
That one.
Oh, no, I wrote on it, sorry.
That's fine. Thank you.
Anybody chance?
Logan, do you have a card, a business card? Did your boss bring one?
I'm happy to leave my phone number, my direct phone number.
I got it.
If you want, you can write it down right here and then we'll
I got it, Gary.
Oh,
I got his email.
Logan, city manager has it, so,
I got your email.
okay.
Not a public hearing, no. You're welcome to attend. I'm not sure it's necessary. The mayor's here. The second reading, it will make it 2 readings, so it'll be March 5th before the city council consider adopting it.
Item 10, work session housing. David, there was just a skinny little package that you provided us. Can you just breeze us through that?
The affected. So I'll read from the memo, but then maybe we can follow along on the screen just on the tracked version.
Thank you.
Pages?
Okay, so, yeah, the memo, hopefully that was helpful to be able to walk through the affected pages version, which was about 60 pages that were affected within the zoning ordinance itself. Memo, what I attempted to do is just walk through one by one and just at least give a quick summary and kind of a playbook on how we're addressing all of our 8 or 10 housing recommendations from the master plan. So the first two are related to the zoning map. And as you are aware from our December meeting, I think we made the decision that we should move forward with creating a new zoning district existing inland lakefront overlay. So that's shown on the first page of the memo. The area outlined in blue is that's the current limits of the inland lakefront overlay district. So I am recommending a new name for it, and again, you can change that if you'd like, but the ILR Zone District, Inland Lakefront Residential. And we'll talk a little bit more about the dimensional requirements later, because there were public comments about that I think are very important to consider. But when we looked at the dimensional requirements for this Inland Lakefront Residential District, it was based on existing conditions. So obviously the RG2 zoning district, which is yellow, doesn't really align with what is actually within the blue outline of the overlay district. So the overlay district was there specifically to recognize the number of non-conforming lots within the RG2 district in this area. So it was mentioned before, there was some concern with the reduction of lot width, lot size, and lot coverage. So those reductions were made based on measurements of those existing lots within that boundary. So rather than having an overlay district to allow for the reduction of setbacks and other provisions to allow those lots to be buildable, the proposal right now is just to create a new district to basically match the existing conditions there within that inland lake overlay area. So we can touch on that a little bit more later, but I think it's a really valuable comment to hear that we and I think Regina mentioned it last time, we need to be very careful about the inland lake overlay district just to make sure that we're not allowing oversized buildings within that area unintentionally. So, but we can get to that. The second page of the memo, now this is the north end. So the purple area on the left there, that's the CC Core Commercial Zoning District. And then north of 5th Street, we are proposing to rezone 6 of the lots from CC to S service. And then the remainder to the south, you can see it's orange and then striped. There are 10 lots there that we propose to rezone from core commercial to RG3, because all those lots, it's really a residential character there. Those are single family lot, mostly they're all single family dwellings. But it is in an area that could potentially be redeveloped with duplexes or townhouses or RG3 type of development there. Based on our review, I think it was November, December, that area north of Fifth, we just felt like CC was not the appropriate zoning district based on the conditions, really the existing conditions of those areas. Okay, then moving into the summary of proposed zoning amendments. So this is the actual text of the ordinance. So the first thing is the definitions. So we've added in new definitions. Those are all the ones at the top. Nothing new here. I did rephrase each of these. Well, we have a definition of dwelling, multiple unit apartment, multiple unit attached, single unit, and 2 unit. So I took out family. The trend is with zoning ordinances that we're talking about more units, and we're not really talking about families necessarily. And so I just to kind of follow that trend of the new terminology that's in more modern zoning codes, I'm trying to reflect that and just talk about single unit, 2 unit, attached unit, or apartments, multi-unit apartments. So really those, it might take us, I'll probably trip up and say multi-family or single family from now and then. It'll take me a minute to wrap my head around these as well, but I am recommending that we just change the terminology a bit. Then lower on that page, you see the existing definitions which we're striking. So we've changed the terms a bit and then also cleaned up the definitions as well. And if you're following along on the memo, the next one is pages 2.22 and 223. M definitions. So we have a definition of maximum building width. So as you notice from in the CC zoning district for waterfront property, we now have a maximum building width requirement. So on the waterfront, we didn't want any redevelopment of buildings to entire side-to-side building. We wanted some open space by means of side setback areas or limiting the building width so that we open up views to the water if there's redevelopment, rather than having a building blocking the entire frontage. Because you can drive down the street certain areas and not know that there's a waterfront behind the building. So if there is redevelopment, we'd like there to be some relationship to the water, open views and so on. So building width is defined here. We also have mixed-use building, which is a type of building that we're proposing within the S district, the GC district, and possibly in S, CC, and I'll have to check possibly GC as well, but we'll get to that. So it's a new building type, which is both commercial and residential in a single structure, typically commercial on the bottom and then residential on top. So we call it a mixed-use building. Then as we continue to scroll onto page 360, accessory dwelling units. So you see here, all I did here is just track that 3380 is going to be deleted from Article 3. So this is Article 3 of the zoning ordinance. That's general provisions. We just stuck it here because there was no other good place to put it. This was the accessory dwelling unit requirements that we talked about earlier tonight. So we just did recommend that this section is amended, but once that's approved by council, we're going to go and pull that out and stick it somewhere else. Just because we're kind of reorganizing, we have a deck of cards and we're shuffling up and reorganizing it essentially. So this will go into 4B, which is all of our specific use requirements for various uses, and we'll talk about that. So then we move on to pages 4.1 to 4.5. So this is just all Article 4, and this is Article 4 is the special land use chapter. And so this is one of our recommendations as part of this entire project was to streamline and to help to improve the development process overall. And one thing this does is it delegates special land use approval authority to the Planning Commission. And so that's obviously something that the City Council will have to weigh in on and see if they're comfortable with that as a whole. But this would allow for the Planning Commission to review special land uses. And with that, one other thing we did is allow for a preliminary plan review. And so this may or may not apply to residential. Right now, all of most of our land use new provisions in these zoning districts where we're adding attached apartments or multifamily or anything else, we're saying that right now they're all permitted. You still have the option to go through and change permitted to special land use. If you feel that you want a little bit extra authority and just a little bit extra oversight over a new multifamily building, for instance. Now, that's a policy question for later or after the public hearing, but this would also allow for a developer to come through and get a preliminary special land, well, they get their special land use approval and preliminary plan review. So let's just say like Samaritas comes in with a multifamily building and we have that as a special land use. They could come in and get concept level review and use approval. So they could at least get the acceptance of the planning commission that this building is good for this location. You like the general concept, you're supportive, and then they could go back, do their engineering, and then come back in for their final site plan review. So the preliminary concept for special land use is similar to what we're also proposing for planned unit development as well. So again, it allows for a developer to get that okay for a project before putting in 75% of the design costs into the work. Because a lot of times, as you know from past projects, you could go through a lot of expense and time in the design work without having a project, without the developer really knowing if it's going to go through. And that's not necessarily always our problem, but I think we should be conscious of it because there are people that want to do good projects, and we shouldn't run them through unnecessary cost and time if there's a better way to do it. If we can make our decision on less information.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
David, is there any concern with us getting rid of the 3-acre minimum for PUDs?
I think that's a good policy question. It was said before that it is a 3-acre requirement. It's 3 acres with the ability for the city council to reduce or waive that number right now. So in my mind, the 3 acres in my mind is arbitrary. So I don't see a reason for 3 acres. Ordinances, when I've seen minimum acreages, it's typically because jurisdictions don't want single lot, single site, single use planned unit developments as a way to circumvent the variance process. But if you're going by the standards of your planned unit development article, that shouldn't happen. The standards are improved and tightened, and so no one's going to use this PUD as a way to abuse the system. It's just not possible if you're truly looking at the standards of approval and other qualifications. If it's abuse, it'll just be so obvious that the Planning Commission or Council is not following their own rules, standards. If someone's just going through as an attempt to circumvent the ordinance. So
sure.
I have no issues with no minimum lot size for PUDs because they still need to meet all their requirements. Yep. Like for instance, I mean, we're going to see buildings. We may see single lot PUDs for multifamily buildings or mixed use buildings. If for instance, if they need an extra story or if they need some extra density or setback relief, there could be a number of things that they need. And PUD is still that tool that we can envision all the scenarios and adjust setbacks and everything now as part of this work. But there might be some things that we're just not thinking of, or there might be a different development scenario. We cannot consider all of them. PUD gives us a little bit of flexibility. And so if we do have a downtown PUD, there won't be any lots that are 3 acres.
Well, it gives us a lot of flexibility, but it also gives us a lot of control.
Yeah, exactly.
So it allows developers to think outside the box and bring us ideas.
And I don't think you're giving up any control because you still have full decision-making authority over any proposal. Mm-hmm. It still needs to meet the standards. It still needs to meet other qualifications. And so I'm not worried if you strike that 3-acre requirement altogether.
Very good. Thank you.
But it's a good question because it comes up in a lot of communities, and a lot of communities struggle with that very question.
Yep. Thank you.
So any comments on special land uses, that having that optional 2-step review process, concept level review with your land use approval, then later come in with your detailed engineering?
I was wondering about the wording where I'm trying to recall exactly what it says in the ordinance, but there was an interesting word, I'm not sure if you called it qualified or conditional or something of that type, the approval, but it was I guess there's some amount of good faith if the commission generally likes what it sees, it's saying, okay, you can, we'll give you a cursory was the word. Thank you, Craig. Yeah, I wondered if that was the right word to use, but I understand what you're trying to say is that give us a chance to review a proposal and see a general sketch of it. And if the commission likes it, then we could give this, and again, I'm not sure cursory is quite the right word, but I see what you're saying, that we would say, we're not going to pull the rug out from under you and say, you come back with detailed work on, and it looks the same. We're not going to suddenly say, oh, now we don't like it.
Yes, yes. And one thing too that you remind me of a statement that is approval of the special land use as a preliminary plan shall not be construed as final confirmation of zoning compliance. So we're not looking at everything. We're looking at a preliminary plan. We are not looking at all final lighting, every single dimension. We need to see final plans to be able to do formal measurements to confirm all compliance. But I mean, we'll catch clear compliance issues, but I don't want it to be construed as you can do that exact plan. It still needs to receive final plan.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, so next is creating a new article named 4B, and I struggle with this a bit. I could go through and just call this Chapter 5 and renumber all the rest of the chapters of the zoning ordinance, but that will take a little bit of extra time. I think it can be done. I would rather have that be Article 5 and then have the subsequent chapters renumbered. It looks a little silly with 4B. It's a little bit of a lazy way to put in a new chapter, but it is it is what we need to do for now. Maybe I don't think it's necessarily something we need to decide right now. I can just check to see how many other references. There might be references throughout every single chapter that I would have to change. So that would take me reviewing every page to make sure that a reference doesn't get pushed to the next chapter and then it's incorrect. So that was my only concern. So for right now, I just did the lazy / convenient way to just call it 4B, and then we can decide whether or not we just want to go through the process of calling that 5 and then renumbering all of the remaining chapters. So I prefer that we do that, and we could certainly do that. Maybe since we have some time before the hearing, or maybe it's even a condition as you send it to City Council. We could certainly do that, though. Okay, and then, so what that 4B, what that is, though, that's specific use requirements. So as you remember, this used to be combined with special land uses, so that meant that any specific use requirements, that means all these uses here, 20 or so, had to be special land uses. So what we're saying now is that there are some of these uses with specific requirements that aren't special land uses. Particularly at the end here where we have accessory dwelling units, we have specific use requirements. We're saying that those are permitted uses, well, at least for, as you determined earlier tonight, accessory dwelling units for non-residential properties, so like the channel side. Those are just going to be permitted based on your recommendation. So they would be here, and they cannot be in Article 4 because they're not special land uses. So we're shifting all specific use requirements to their own chapter, and that's really a best practice because some permitted uses should have specific requirements, and that shouldn't just automatically trigger special land use review. Any questions on that? That's a little complicated, but probably more complicated than it is. And then with that, Craig had just shown that the accessory dwelling units for non-residential as well as accessory dwelling units that are accessory to single-family dwellings are going to be located here. And so this one here is I gave some general parameters for ADUs in residential districts in previous meetings. I kind of gave a menu of how you could treat them. So this is kind of the more formalized language. I don't know if you want to get into that. It's along the same line as our previous conversations, but I did tighten it up a bit. Obviously, only one ADU per resident per single unit residence. Livable floor area, I put in a provision that we cap it at 600 square feet or 50% of the single family. Again, I'm sorry, I have to word search this and get the single family out of there as well. But it's 600 square feet or 50% of the single unit dwelling. Just because it has to be truly accessory to that principal dwelling. We had some restrictions on short-term rentals. The exemptions under 6, so this one, I'm going to also do a bit more studying on that before the hearing. The square footage allocated to an ADU shall not count against the maximum lot coverage for the applicable zoning district. So what this is being a little bit accommodating. We're acknowledging that this is something new. This is something to increase housing supply and allow for lower cost rentals for somebody to move in the community and be a part of the community without being a homeowner. But there's going to be cases to where for someone to put in a detached ADU in the backyard, they might not be able to do it because of lot coverage. And rather than having them have to come in for a variance, we would just not count it against that requirement. Basically, make it exempt from that just to be more accommodating to this. The other option is you don't put that exemption in, and if there's an issue, they could go through the variance process. But I kind of took this as a mindset. At first, let's be accommodating, and then if we need to tighten things up, we can. If we want to hold on to a little bit more authority, or we can always do that. But this would be a little bit more accommodating to allow for the addition of ADUs to new backyards. Then other than that, any questions on ADUs? And we still have to discuss where they should be permitted, but we'll get to that as well. And then, so moving on. Okay, so the next, Craig is showing design standards. That's page 5.7. So the next few, which within Article 5 and Article 6, so that's all of our design standards, required landscaping, general requirements for parking numeric requirements, and the off-street parking design and setback requirements. So when we were looking to allow for redevelopment of especially the CC, GC, and S districts, this is really all applicable to those districts. We need to make some provisions because parking requirements and the parking landscaping requirements are all very much kind of suburban requirements. That you have a large green field, you build a brand new principal use, you build a parking lot with shade trees. It's all assuming that it's not infill downtown type development. So we had to really kind of exempt these types of projects in our commercial districts so that they're actually feasible. So we could go, like I said before, we could go through this whole project and say, yes, we want multi-unit apartment buildings in this district. All good. It's allowed use now. They come in, they say, oh, well, look at the parking requirements. Look at the landscaping requirements. Look at everything. We can't actually do it because of these other restrictions. So we've lightened up the requirements for certain situations that we've discussed. Not for everything across the board, but just for the situations that are allowing this type of new housing. And we did improve the architectural requirements in 5.6. So we have a requirement that says any building that has 100 feet of building facade has to have some architectural articulation to it. So you have to break it up with windows and doors and porches and overhangs. I suggest that that's knocked down to 30 feet. but only for the CC zoning district. So we talked, over the summer, we were looking at building designs and we said, well, we could really kind of tune it up and really prescribe the building design, or we could leave it open. This is kind of the middle ground that we're taking what we already have in the ordinance, but we're applying it to smaller facade buildings as well, so down to 30 feet is going to be something where most of the buildings that we review now in CC would qualify for this architectural articulation and kind of making a building more interesting, making it more attractive. And also for that, we're putting in transparency requirements for buildings in the CC zoning district. So if you look in the tracked version, it's a pretty wide range. So first story, 33 to 80%, upper stories, 20 to 70%. So that's kind of a best practice that's used in a lot of form-based codes for the amount of transparency. So windows and doors on that street-facing facade. To have something more than 80% on the first floor, it's going to be too much glass. It's not going to be that small town character. And then if you have less than 33% or 1/3, it's going to be, there's just not enough. You're not going to do the window shopping. You're not going to be able to see the activity and the excitement of folks in there dining. So it's just to get us into some base level of transparency requirements that are pretty broad, not hard to meet. They're really preventing the extremes, too much glass or too much brick. That's kind of in the middle. So, but I think it would be something helpful to have in for CC. Then moving along, I'll just go right into the planned unit development process. So this was obviously a pretty significant rewrite of the project of the process. This shouldn't be new. This is we chatted a little bit about this over the summer and the fall. Again, the whole intent statement in 810 is revamped, and we wanted to focus on housing and mixed-use development. So that's that paragraph B there. We're being very clear on what qualifies for zoning modifications. Like I said before, this is not just to circumvent the zoning ordinance, but we want projects that provide public benefit. And then it's an overlay district rezoning. So right now, it's a special land use. So you go through a special land use process to get modifications to zoning requirements. I've always had kind of a fundamental issue with that, like how you could change zoning requirements through a special land use process and not the legislative act of an ordinance to do so. So in all my communities that I work with, we rezone to PUD, and it's a zoning map amendment where it's an overlay. So we do a crosshatch over that underlying district. But you go through a rezoning process so that the map changes and you have an ordinance that is adopted. Now in your last PUD, we had resolutions that include a lot of that same information. So we are certainly covered by strong resolutions, but ordinance, I think, is just a better way to do it when you're making changes to zoning requirements and flexibility. Then as we continue to go down, the qualification conditions and modifications, no minimum acreage there, and then our base district and PUD types. So basically this is saying that you have all of you base your requirements on a base district. So you are a PUD for, if it's a corresponding zone, an RG1 area, RG1 is your zoning district requirements unless you modify them through this process. So that's the intent of that. So we have residential PUDs, mixed use PUDs, and non-residential PUDs. And the table really kind of outlines all of those, the master plan designations, and they're corresponding to the base zoning district. So that follows the zoning plan in the master plan better than the current ordinance. So it's showing 1 for 1. If you are in the C district, let me see here. If you're in the commercial future land use, it translates to the general commercial zoning district. So that's your base district requirements. And then it says specifically there, C base district requirements unless waived. allowed use is the allowed uses within your base district. Density bonuses we're only allowing in those residential PUDs because there's really no densities in the commercial districts anyway.
So for this inland lakefront residential, does that fall into this? Or not? Where would that fall in this chart?
That's a good catch. Let me see here. I need to add that in there. Yes, that's
I
a
think
good catch.
there's a couple. There's another one as we go forward. I think that may be the acronym. I'll get when we
Okay,
get to
yeah,
it.
yeah, let me- there
I know
might-
this is a new. I just live there, so that's why it sparks
Sure,
my
no, I,
brain. But
that's why
yeah.
we have a lot of eyes on this. So,
Yeah.
but yes, if there, for that, we could, yeah, it would just be the future land use category and then the corresponding base zoning district. Let me see, yeah, that is not there. But yeah, it would either, unless for some reason, if you did not want the PUD provision for that district, you could also not include in this table. So that's another option too, and that's one where we talked a little bit before, Gene, about like, do we want to allow for? Is that even something that we should be? It's such a unique area with smaller historic cottage lots on the water. It's like, should we even? I don't even know if we should be reviewing PUDs there. It's just, it seems to me more as they're going to be existing single lots and existing single lots that are redeveloped. So maybe subconsciously I didn't put in there for that reason, but or I may have just had an oversight there. But I think that's a good question for the group as a policy. Do we even want to allow PUDs in that with in the lake residential base district? So I'll mark that as a question.
Maybe you want to include it in the, for, at the next hearing and with a star next to it saying, if you weren't sure about whether it should be in or out, let's be sure, let's give it some thought and either actually include it or actually delete it.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Along on that same note, as I formalize, just reproof all this and reread it and just analyze a bit more before the public hearing, I'll go through and highlight areas that I think are those main policy questions. If we don't answer them tonight, I want to make sure that we give special focus on is it 10 issues that are going to be particularly contentious, and what do we think about those? So there may certainly that we're not limited to that, but there's going to be some that are on my mind that I want to ask just to make sure that there's not unintended consequences later, or something that you weren't aware of that we are now allowing.
Beautiful.
And then if we scroll down a little bit, I just want to just show the modifications. So I think this section is important. And so this is page, what page is this, Craig?
8.3.
8.3, yep. And so for PUDs with residents, with dwellings, so there's going to be residential or mixed use PUDs. We list out specific housing goals for planned unit developments, and the applicant has to clearly identify which of the following goals are being achieved and how the development specifically advances such goals. So at least one shall be met. So these are very specific housing goals, and it's going to keep a developer, it's going to keep them with our housing goals in mind. It's not just for, I can make a little bit extra money, I can pack in some more houses, I can do this, I can do that. No, it's got to advance these goals of the city. Okay, we could keep moving through PUD. We've talked about the process. Obviously, it's a preliminary plan process first in rezoning, and then later they come back with a final plan. We have approval standards, conditions of approval, and then talk a lot about the PUD agreement later. Also, Craig just went by the open space reduction. So there are some open space requirements. In most PUD report, we should have for some of the base districts should have an open space requirements, but there should be an allowance for the city council to reduce or waive that if certain conditions are met. So again, it gives some more flexibility, because if you just say 25% across the board, you might paint yourself into the corner without having the factors considered to reduce open space. Because some sites really just might not lend themselves to having an open space area to them. So it kind of depends on the context. The residential density bonus, this is an allowance for additional density, and I believe it's if you can prove that multiple goals are met. Hold on. Yeah, sorry, right up top there. It says all discretion of the city council PUD proposals that demonstrate that multiple housing goals under the previous section are eligible for a density bonus of up to 20%. So to qualify, you need one goal, but if you can prove that you're achieving multiple, you can consider density bonuses for those residential PUDs. Then again, review process, preliminary rezoning, and then later you come in with your final documents. So that's obviously a lot. Is there anything specifically that's on your mind about PUD? And the steps of the process there are just, I said, just to discuss a community meeting. Some communities require a developer to go out on their own and host a community meeting. So they would have to publicize it. Usually we require them to do the same notice area that would be required as part of a public hearing. So the city could give them the names and addresses, but they have to go out and make contact. Or they could rent community space somewhere in the city, or maybe they can have it here if City Hall is available. But we have done that in other communities where PUDs have been more concerning. So again, that's not that's just an option if you want that. But sometimes that helps to get the public comments out early, and then you could see how the developer addresses those into their proposal before it's even submitted. So. The only questions I had in this chapter, there were some density highlights there. 4. And I want to work through those a bit as well, just to make sure that those are right. I think they're generally in line with what they should be, but I do want to maybe touch on that again prior to the public hearing, or have something fully assessed by the time we have the hearing. If it's next month, I'll just work through that and maybe make some suggestions up or down on some of it. But just
David, this is the box on section 8.5, site development requirements, zoning, and then you have highlighted in green.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, correct.
It took me a minute to read the numbers with all the question marks.
Serious questions.
So with your experience in zoning in other communities, is this reasonable or rational or similar to what you see in other communities?
Well, it's somewhat based on on the base district requirements. So, and that's similar to how it is now. It's the units per gross acre are close to what the density would be calculated as based on your minimum lot area. So, but it's not exact. But yeah, I think they're generally in line with what the zoning districts allow, maybe a little bit more, and then you could get a density bonus on top of that. But I want to give that an extra set of eyes myself, just to double check that. And Jordan, actually, to answer your question, I had actually, to correct myself, I actually referred to the Inland Lake overlay, or the Inland Lake residential now, as RG4.
I wondered. It had RD, RG1, RG2, RG3, and then, yeah, I wondered if it was RG1.
So I just caught myself, I think I do have it there, but
Okay.
again, I think that goes back to the question, should it be there?
Yeah.
But I was thinking, we could call that RG4, just, stay on the same.
Okay. So
Feel
then-
stupid, but does anyone know why there's a G in all these? I
Wondering
really
that
think
too.
about that, like RG1, RG2, what is G? Residential general? Is that the kind of how it's? Yeah, I didn't want to admit that I did not know why there's a G on all these, RG1, so it's usually R1 or R2, so. And Craig doesn't know, so.
I was wondering
I
where
must go
RG4
back a
came
long
from.
way.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're done with planned unit development. Then in section 9.10 zone districts.
Once we get into here, when we get into the charts, I do see again, there's the RD, RG1, RG2, RG3, and then RIL. Is that supposed to be ILR or whatever the acronym is?
Yes.
Okay. So just when we
I
get to
think
that chart.
there, okay, yeah, I see. There's
It's there, we're
inconsistency.
good there. I think it's 9,
Yeah.
25, 26, 27, so maybe it's down the ways, but I'll make sure.
Got it. Yep. I will. We can
it's
just
not-
call it the inland lakefront residential. I think the ILR, those references, I'll word search that and strike that, because I think I obviously went back and forth a little bit on what to call it, and then felt, obviously the RG3 just would go in order of what it is.
Yeah, it's this chart, so it's like the very, so we're not there
Yeah,
yet.
yep,
but
in that one
it's
too.
At the
I'll-
end, the RIL.
Yeah, yep, I'll check that. So this is page 9.1, I believe, added to the table. Then we're really getting into really the zoning district requirements, which is kind of the heart of this project is. So page 9.3 is going to be this district. This is low density dune residential. And I highlight, so that really the only change here is adding accessory dwelling units, accessory to a single unit dwelling. And that this is more, I wanted to flag this as a policy question. Is this something that how do we feel about that? Because I wasn't quite sure where we were leaning on that. I think we had talked about possibly only allowing them on non-waterfront properties, but again, is this an issue? Do you think it would be a sensitive issue if we opened up ADUs and RD for waterfront properties? But also we could say, we could divide it by attached versus detached ADUs. So an attached ADU is, it should really just blend into the main principal structure, and that's usually not a concern necessarily. I think that detached ADUs sometimes become a little bit more concerning, especially when we're saying we're going to exempt you from lot coverage to put in a detached ADU. I thought of any district, RD might be one that it's a little more sensitive, especially for waterfront. So wanted to see what your thoughts are, or at least plant that seed for to discuss at the hearing or next meeting.
David, Craig and I were chatting about this, and I just said, I think there are lots that are large enough, but maybe in particular not the waterfront side, and maybe, but there are small ones too that maybe would not be good candidates for RDU. But I'm, as someone who lives in the dune residential, I'd like to keep the door open, but maybe you're addressing a good qualifier, making it not the waterfront, but the other side of the road.
And really, the waterfront setback requirement, so it's 40 feet or the greater of all of your average of your neighbors. So that right there might just be something that disqualifies a lot of properties anyway from putting in a detached unit on the waterfront side of a house. So you have that's much stricter than the rest of the zoning district. So that might be your main limitation. And if for some reason you can meet that, that means you have a really deep waterfront lot, which is may be more appropriate there. So probably that scenario might not exist, but it might be self-limiting just by that 40-foot plus. Because Craig, a lot of our setbacks that we've measured for new houses, I think a lot of times we're measuring 80 feet, or in some cases where the average 80 feet, 100 feet, where the setback ends up.
I don't know if critical dunes create issues as well.
Yeah, all the above, which may be the limiting factor. Even if we allow it, doesn't mean it's going to happen. Everything else might say no. Okay, so then moving on to the next zoning district, which is RG1, low density residential. So we're adding in accessory dwelling units as a permitted use to non-waterfront lots. No, I'm sorry. That's what we just said here. Okay, I had it as more of a question in the memo, but then in 960 or 950 I did not put waterfront there. So I had it as I was writing the memo as a question, but I did not add it in 950 in the text. So again, I think we covered that. So 960 then is RG1 zoning district, low density residential. So here we're adding in accessory dwelling units on non-waterfront lots there. Do we have how many? Not sure if we need that provision there. I think I actually may have accidentally put that in RG1 rather than in the one above it in RD. So I think that was what I meant to do. All these RGs started to blend together. So
that's why we're here.
yeah, I thought it was like, why isn't it in RD? Oh, okay. So I'm going to shift that provision. Actually, to kind of what we had decide on, maybe we just strike that all together and just allow them if those conditions are met, if they can make a setback, if they can. So maybe we don't even have the non-waterfront lot provision, but I'll mark that as a question for next time as well. Okay. So other than that, in RG1, no other changes aside from accessory dwelling units. Later we'll talk about dimensions. And then the next is RG2. This is where we are RG2 already allows for 2-unit ones, I believe. But I just highlighted those because we're changing the terms. Then we are adding in here accessory dwelling units. So again, our RG2 doesn't change significantly for the land uses. RG3, this is something to where these land uses are all mostly allowed in RG3 already, but we're highlighting them because we're changing the terminology. Then also allowing accessory dwelling units. So not a lot of changes to the residential district uses, except for adding ADUs in most of them. Then this is 985, inland lakefront residential. And so this is really most of what was already in the overlay district, because the overlay district is over RG2. And so I basically just mirrored all those same RG2 allowances in new proposed section 985. So it's not opening up anything more than that's already allowed in that area. Continued. There's one here. I made one comment in the memo about reconstruction there. So there's a unique provision that allows for reconstruction. I don't really think that section's necessary. I'll probably highlight this I'll probably read this a bit more and then keep it in the next version for the hearing, but we may want to strike that. We already have reconstruction allowances in our nonconformity section. And this is really kind of a nonconformity regulation, which I don't think needs to be in there, especially now that we're adjusting, we're essentially calibrating the setbacks for this area appropriately. I don't think you need a special provision for reconstruction. but I am gonna look into that a bit more and just to make a final recommendation if that's needed.
Excuse me, Dave. On G here, we have continuous lots, should be combined if they're in the same ownership. Isn't that through every district though?
Yeah, that's another one. That should already be in our nonconformity regulation, it's like 10.5 or 10.4. So I think that doesn't need to be there either. That would, yeah, because anytime if you're an owner of two contiguous vacant lots, I've even seen ordinances to where it's, if you own two lots and only one is vacant, you still have to combine them. So that there's more aggressive ways to treat that as well. But yeah, since we already have that in nonconformities, we can strike that. We could probably strike not reconstruction below that as well. It's just not necessary. So there's my note there, which basically says that. Then moving on to nothing there. Get into the non-residential zoning districts. So in service, we're allowing for multi-unit apartment buildings, as well as I think multi-unit, or I think mixed is just a little bit is mixed-use buildings. So again, discussed. And then so in service, we allow for single and two-family dwellings in residential over permitted use. I think we can strike both of those. I look at the service district. I don't see any really appropriateness for single and two-family dwellings in the service district. It's almost like a quasi-industrial district, and it's not something I think we should encourage single-family, two-family development there, but allow for more consistently larger mixed use and multifamily buildings, but not just a house. It seems like it's not character of, it's not a huge district anyway, but
There are some houses in here though.
yes, so that's south of Fifth.
Five houses.
Those were on the, are you on the,
This is 4th Street.
okay, so on the left side is service, the right side is for commercial.
Right.
So on the left side, there are two houses on the corner there.
It's across the street.
The next one down, that's CC there. So again, it's not that, I don't think I don't really have any issues if we keep it there as well, because I don't know if we're gonna really have any new houses in that service district. Those that are there, whether we keep it or not, they can continue as non-conforming uses if we struck from the district.
If they were damaged, they could be rebuilt. Okay, as long as they can be rebuilt if they're damaged, yeah. They wasn't
Yeah,
back there, sure.
that sounds good, Dave. It's a forward-making statement.
It was probably there because the thought was they were going to accommodate those handful of existing residences there, but I don't think it's neat because you have non-conformity protection. Then for commercial and general commercial, again, we've added in some strong intent statements. You've seen most of that. And then we have a table here, which is, I find this a little strange that we have a table for land use regulation here that's inconsistent with the other chapters that are listed out, permitted and special land uses, but again, just how it happened. Then we've added in toward the bottom of the table, I think. So added a new category, residential and mixed use, so ADUs. So that's already in this allowed. They are already allowed in GC, or sorry, GC. Multiple unit apartment buildings would be allowed in both. Multiple unit attached dwellings, that's your townhouses, permitted. But we had the conversation, maybe not having townhouses front Pine Street in core commercial. Not that it would necessarily be a bad thing, but core commercial is really intended to be it's your only true downtown for commercial zoning district and probably only encourage commercial buildings, mixed use, and apartment buildings, but not like row houses. It just seems to me that there's plenty of other districts that allow for that, and core commercial should really kind of be preserved for what it is. Then mixed use building allowed in both. And then there's a couple that we're removing here. Well, those last two, we did have the conversation about the proliferation of storage buildings, storage units, and we talked about maybe restricting them in GC just to not take up all our available land as storage units. So what I said here is special land use not fronting Van Wagner for both the storage suites and self-storage. So there are some, like in the corner of 174 and Van Wagner, there's I think it's an 8-acre property. So, it's a good sized property, which I can almost see something like the Samaritas building there almost. I just wouldn't want that to be taken up by something that is inconsistent with our goals. But so that statement there in the table would disqualify that project or that parcel from storage, self-storage, things like that. So then getting toward the end here, but that's just housekeeping. Okay, then our tables here. So this is really the conversation.
Sorry. Before we go to the next table, can I just ask a quick question about section 9.140, the Parks and Preserves zoning section? And I was just curious, under the principal permitted uses, it says nature preserve, but then special land use, public open space, and public park. And I just wondered why those are not under the principal permitted uses.
I think I'd have to search the memory banks, but I'm guessing because nature preserve is passive, but the other public open space and public park are more active. So maybe it's the active versus passive use of those. That if there for some reason would, but again, all these are already city properties. It's almost assuming like there's going to be some new parcel added to this, and then if something was to change into a park, it'd be a special land use. So, I kind of see the same thought. I'd have to look back at our notes from a couple years ago.
Okay, yeah, just something to star and think about, I think.
But yeah, it might just be. It was probably because of the active versus passive use, and the more active use would be involve a public hearing if there's going to be changes to something like that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So the next couple pages, I'm probably not going to go into all this, but I can just generally explain. I broke this table out into two separate tables because it's a lot. And when you start adding in different variations within a zoning district. So just looking at this, we have single unit, 2-unit, multi-unit, multiple unit apartment, non-residential use. So there's various scenarios that could be occurring in a single zoning district. So once you start adding those, these tables become unruly. So this one here, the first one is our residential zoning districts. And again, that last one, RAL, that will be RG3 or RG4. So they all go through where it's not applicable. That just means that use is not permitted within that zoning district. So there's not going to be any dimensional requirements. But you've seen a lot of this already. So like, for instance, just to give an example, single unit dwellings at the top there, that's all minimum lot area. So you have 12,000, then 10,000, then RG2 is now 6,000. So that's been adjusted. RG2 has been adjusted down to 6,000 based on measurements and averages. RG3 is 4,000, and then RG4 is 5,000. So that based on measurements that a couple months ago I showed you the block analysis, and various different neighborhoods, and gave you averages of setbacks, averages of lot width, averages of lot size. So there's a lot of data that went into this, but I'm still gonna give all those numbers another look, and they may be adjusted up or down before you guys send this off to the city council. I just wanna make sure it's right, and so, I'm gonna continue to look at the blocks and just make sure that this all calibrated appropriately. I think it's all roughed in close to where it needs to be, if not correct, but, I do wanna just look at that again before it goes on to council. All these are mostly we have addressed these in the last memo you received, December. And then moving on then is a bit further down, then this is all of our mixed use and non-residential zoning districts. So we had made some recommendations mainly concerning mixed use buildings and multifamily, where allowable. So they're only allowed in service, core commercial and general commercial. So we had to put in new applicable setbacks for those. It made some other adjustments. The bottom one is maximum building width. So it only applies to CC waterfront lots only. So I mentioned that 60% before for the purpose of opening up the waterfront. It only applies to CC waterfront lots only, but I had to add a row there for that. If scroll down to the next page, this is concerning the number of units within a dwelling. So a dwelling doesn't mean like a dwelling unit is where you live, but a dwelling is the entire building that could have multiple dwelling units. So we a lot of times just call that's a dwelling, it's a single dwelling. But so I'll try to get in the habit as well of calling it a single dwelling unit versus the dwelling itself is multiple family building, multiple unit building, sorry. So obviously single unit, 2 unit, or you have 1 unit, 2 unit. Then when we get into multiple unit attached dwelling, so we allow this in RG3, and scroll just back to where it was. I just want to make sure this is right too. In RG3, I think 6 unit attached townhouse buildings probably makes the most sense. When you get to 8, that's really kind of I think it would be out of scale with the character. And when we looked at all the pictures from other communities, I think anything more than 6 units in a row gets to be pretty bulky and probably out of scale. But in the other districts where we allow it, CC and GC, I think strike the S out of there because we decided that it's not appropriate there. But in general commercial and core commercial, I think that you could have 8 unit buildings there just because it's not a residential district. But again, that's something that we could look into. I think 8 is too much in residential context, but in a mixed use district or commercial district, I don't think 8's that big of a deal, especially if you allow for much more significant commercial uses. And then the number of units for apartments, so RG3, I think you could have a small, like a 2-story apartment building with 4 on the bottom, 4 on top. I don't think 8's that big of a deal for a small apartment building. I think we have some in RG3 already. There's a few multi-unit buildings that have a handful of units. I think, let me see.
Harper's Cove.
What about north of North Shore? Those are all 4plexes. Okay. Okay.
But there's a lot of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So when we're talking about number of units per building, that's just to control the overall scale. That one may be one that we highlight, and I'm going to look into that a bit more as well. So in RG3, we decided that 6 units might be the most appropriate for side-by-side townhouses. Maybe it's 4 to 6 for a multi.
Gables is 4.
Gables is 4. Okay. So again, that's a number I think we can adjust. I'll highlight that as a needs a bit more.
But that's clusters of 4, so it's not a limit of 4
correct. Per building,
per dwelling?
per dwelling. Yes. Okay. And then the last table. So this one is the minimum area in square feet, gross area, for each, for types of dwelling units. So accessory dwelling unit, we don't, so the top row there says no minimum because you would just fall back on building code. Some jurisdictions will say 300 feet. We had this debate in Saugatuck a couple of months ago, and we decided to strike it. Because it's going to have to meet building code. So there's minimum for living space. There are minimum requirements to just be a structure that's safe to live in. So building code is really going to be what influences how large it's going to be, or its minimum size. So it still has to be safe, has to have enough room to move around in it. It just needs to meet building code. Unless you wanted to say, they shouldn't be any less than 300, or if you have a number that you would stick it there. But I don't have a good justification for any low end number for an 80. Only the high end. I think you should have a high end number because it should stay accessory to a principal structure. But then we get we get a little bit more aggressive with the reductions. So single unit dwelling, 650, and then 2 unit dwelling, this is 600 per dwelling unit within that dwelling. Same with multi-unit attached dwelling, so townhouses. So each townhouse dwelling unit would be 600 square feet. And then the multiple unit apartment dwelling, we have it based on the number of bedrooms. And that's those have been dropped a little bit. And I looked at Zillow listings, I looked at other things, and I tried to just be under what I was seeing advertised. And then the logic behind the 650 is probably the most important for a single unit dwelling. Is the Ottawa County small house. I have the
Small footprint?
Small footprint project. Yep. Their concept 1 was very small. It was 440 square feet. Now that, I think, my opinion is that's an ADU. That's. But again, this is a policy question for
Or a studio?
Yep. Yeah. It could be something. But if you want it to be a single dwelling unit on a single lot, and if you want to accommodate concept 1 from this menu of options from Ottawa County, you would have to reduce it further than 650. Concept 2 is 673 square feet and 24 feet wide from Ottawa County. So I put that at, so I have ours at 650 just to be a little bit under that. So that's more of a policy question for you.
Makes sense.
So as a policy question, I don't know. I'm wondering if we could consider going to the smallest level that's in the Ottawa County small footprint thing, but highlight it so that we could either accept it or say we need a little bigger. But I don't know. That's you've suggested, Dave, that you're going to highlight the 8 or 10 of the most consequential changes that we're looking at for our next meeting, so we can maybe focus on the most important stuff. And I don't know if Mr. Mayor, I know you also like the small footprint homes, but am I hearing you say that the 450, that's just one of their units, and you're saying that one is too small for us?
All, but what is it going to take to energize people to think outside the box? You want to, just like with the front of the cell tower, the setback off the property line, you hate to tie anybody's hands up.
And do you recall
Well,
what
in
the
the
next
perspective-
largest size was, Dave? What was the next largest size of the? I think
the lowest was 440, then 673, 824, and then 1,056. So they had four concepts, and each concept had a couple different, like 2 or 3 different styles, like architectural looks to them. So, but they were like the 4 concepts were based on the size, so 400-ish to just over 1,000.
So these concepts are, they're very attractively drawn out. But I don't know, we're kind of relying on your discretion or your direction a little bit too, Dave. You think we should draw the line at at 650, and that would allow us to have that, was it 660 you said?
650.
Six, well, but the small footprint design is a little bit larger than that. So the only one we would be cutting out would be the ones in the 400s.
So yeah, this would do concepts 2, 3, and 4. But again, we could put in the low end and adjust from there. But your call. I didn't know how aggressive you wanted to be on this issue, so I took the middle ground, at least for this draft.
I guess I'm just trying to make sure we maybe look at it one more time. So, but it's getting late, so yes.
I was just gonna say, it's hard until you go inside one of them to like know what 450 feels like. I've been in ones that are like 500. I wouldn't have a problem for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in some very small homes as
And
well.
one of the things too, that it's always hard to remember that we're not planning for today. We're spending these hours working for 10, 20 years down the road. And I hate to tie people's hands up with concepts that might be doable down the road.
Thank you.
Good. So we've made a lot of revisions and a lot of adjustments. Just to clarify, this would go to a public hearing. Okay, just because like when Nicole came up and spoke, she brought up a lot of valid points for specifically for the inland lakefront district. And yeah, I would like more input from the public, so I'm glad to hear that.
What I can do too, I can continue the memo itself was more of just to guide us through this conversation and just to almost make a summary list of things. But there might be things that I'll expand on in the memo for the public hearing, just to make this more of an educational publication as well. So I can, just knowing that public needs to review this and we've been talking about this for several months, and there are going to be folks that are going to read this for the first time and be intimidated by 60 pages worth of highlights. So I can continue to work on this just with the public consumption in mind as well.
So would we be ready for an initial public hearing at the next month's meeting?
Yes.
Good. And is everyone currently available? Thank you. I appreciate it's 12 minutes after 9. This is a long meeting on a cold night, so thank you everyone for your attention and catching things. Very commendable. So
I don't know this.
do we need an additional work session on ADUs at this point? And this is specifically on the utility question.
Can that be tabled?
Could that be tabled and put into the next?
Well, the question was out there, and you have an opinion from the city attorney that utilities can be run off from the existing house. So if you want something changed, you're gonna have to ask city council to change the ordinance to require separate meters for water.
But the opinion from the city attorney was that it wasn't required.
At this time, correct, they're not required.
And I think, again, when we discussed that, Craig, we thought that was all right to leave it like that.
Staff doesn't have an issue with that, no.
Yes. So do you need a a motion or direction from council, from the commission? Yeah,
Yeah, just consensus, if you want to change it, yes, or not change, just leave it as is.
be okay leaving it as is?
Comfortable with
Okay.
that? That's
Thank
with
you.
being able to use the existing utilities from the main home.
Right, and then the electric company and the gas company, they have their own regulations, so it's gonna be up to them what they do.
Interesting enough, a lot of ordinances, not a lot, but when these ordinances first started being prepared, a lot of them would say that they actually had to have the same utilities. They had to be connected through the principal. So we don't have that. I haven't referenced it here just to defer to the city's policy otherwise.
We're ready for public comments? Seeing none, zoning administrators report? No report. Chairman report, I would like to mention that the planning commission received a memo from the public on the process, and we also heard a member of the public speak to this. I know it's a big topic, and hopefully we'll get more people watching online and participating. That's all I have. Sandy,
No report?
you know?
Thank you, Dave, for all the work you did summarizing all of this. I don't know if any of you saw the information about Grand Haven Township's Bauman Residential Project that is doing 87 single-family homes and 36 attached townhomes that are affordable. According to, of course, these numbers change all the time, but according to the median family income of $65,000, people could afford a mortgage between $190,000 and $300,000. And the similar projects that this company has done, the houses are between $139,900 and $279,900. So they're doing some affordable housing things, and I think that's kind of exciting to see what's going on in our communities. That's all.
Jordan,
No report.
Mr. Mayor?
Two things. In our packet was about the Strategic Planning Community Forum with the Board of Light and Power. They're really trying to get a sense from the community in terms of support for the BLP doing power generation. And it would be a great, one was tonight, and there's one next Tuesday from 6:30 to 8. Ready to go. And then also, I really appreciate all the words of condolence and cards and everything on the passing of my father a week ago. Really appreciate thoughts.
If I can just follow up on your comment about the Board of Light and Power. I can't attend tonight's meeting or next week's, but if you go to that link, you can comment publicly. You can fill out a form and make a comment, so you don't have to attend the meeting.
Thank you, Gary.
Connor?
No report.
Right. Motion to adjourn?
Are we gonna, it says next meeting, we're just
Oh.
assuming it's March?
Is there,
March 5th.
yeah. Be there. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. David, thank you so much.
Sure.
Appreciate all the good work.
I just took a picture. I don't know if that's an incorrect reference or. I remember being tripped up on that. Because that's quickly old. I couldn't find it. I think it was actually the first highlight. I don't know. I was highlighting this as I just brought this over. So this is. I didn't know that. It just I totally just wondering what the heck this. I think it was actually. I think it's a misref. I think it's a typo. I think it was referenced in the section, but I don't think it's needed anyway.
Let's do.
Have a great night.